Hey everybody, welcome to my 11th, yes, my 11th, live, somebody has the video playing. I can hear myself.
Right when we start too.
Is that
Anybody not using headphones?
Huh? There, it's No, I'm still hearing it. That's interesting.
Wonderful timing.
It's going to be so weird if I have to hear myself in my head, like the whole time.
It appears to be an error.
This sounds really creepy.
Yeah.
Is it gone now?
Oh, it's gone.
There we go.
Oh, it's gone. I'm sane again. Hi, everybody. The voices are
Steve.
gone.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was me. This is my first video thing, and I didn't know about the headphones.
Oh, that's okay. That's no problem. All is forgiven.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not a problem. It's
Little known fact, mic feeds into speakers, or speakers feed into mic, and creates effective tape delay because there's always that processing lag.
Oh, well, thank you.
So as long as that's on, we can swear as much as we want, and I can just bleep it out.
Yeah.
Because we have a tape delay.
Anyway, be pretty quick.
Yeah, it's like a 1 second delay. Oh shit.
Well, then you're gonna believe yourself too.
Yeah. I don't know. So I just want to let everybody know, watching this now, how erudite and intelligent my patrons are, because I usually open the Hangout about 15 minutes before showtime, and I just keep my microphone and my camera turned off so that people can sort of matriculate in, and then I pop in like 5 minutes before showtime, and I pop in before showtime for this show. And what do I hear but some of my patrons discussing Plato and Descartes and philosophy, and you wonder why I'm insecure about my own grasp of philosophy when I talk about that kind of stuff in like an Atheist Read series. I always say, I'm not a philosopher, I don't know anything about philosophy. It's because people way smarter than me watch this shit, and they will know.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, Steve, that smart is a vector quantity. I mean, I'm passable as an engineer, and I know this and that because I've rubbed up against it in something short of 65 years. But I mean, there's times when you do stuff in that Atheist Read series, and it's just going.
Yeah, and I'd say more important than intelligence would have to be curiosity anyway. So long as you're curious, you can't learn anything if you're not curious.
That's true.
Yeah, but it has to be a blend of the two, because if you're curious but you're not capable of apprehending what you're looking at, you're still in the same you're in the same boat.
Yeah.
I would have said intelligence. Would have said intelligence is a tensor quantity with a variable level of variables and number of different changing manifolds.
Shut up, you show off.
I'm gonna have to look up tensor quality now.
I can't sound that smart. In the chat a minute ago, David said his degree is in math, so he is also an actual smart person. As opposed to me, my degree is in English, so as I've said many times before, I can sound smart without actually having to be smart.
Or raise a cup to a fellow English major, huh?
Hey, that's right. English majors for life.
You don't have a cup to raise?
I don't. Actually, I don't. No, I drank like I drank an entire pot of coffee before this, and I have nothing to raise. I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually suck at math too. Like, I mean, I did college algebra in high school, and then when I heard that I was free because I was doing a writing kind of degree, I was like, yes!
Here, I don't have a cup to raise, but I just reached for what was handy. I have a Johnny Cash collectible pocket knife. I will raise this to you. My fellow English major.
That'll do.
I have no idea what that has to do with being an English major, but there it is.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I got saved from differential equations. I was carrying a B into it right up until May the 4th, 1970. Anybody remember what happened that day?
I'm 20, so no.
To quote, was it Neil Young who wrote it? "Four Dead in Ohio."
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And I got asked by my prof, hey, you're carrying a B into the final. I can just give you the B, or you can take the final and see if you can prove it. I took the B. Oh, yes, I absolutely took the B.
Wow. May 4th, 1970. 10 years and 1 day before I was born. Yeah.
What happened that day?
The Kent State shooting.
Kent State shooting.
The hell of it is, I was down there over the weekend with a friend of mine. We knew a couple of nice bars down there. We were going to go pub crawling. And we went down there of a Saturday. We went to one place and we drove right back to Cleveland because the mood down there could not have been uglier if it tried.
All right, Kent State. Sorry, the audio was a little mixed.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you think, I mean, that's still, to me, I wasn't alive when it happened, but that it has to be one of the most shocking things to ever happen in the last 40 or 50 years of American history. When you study that, as someone, from my perspective, as someone who didn't live through it, you're like, oh my God, did that actually happen? Like, people actually opened fire on student protesters?
Yeah, the National Guard, not just people.
The National Guard, they shot people?
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
And the hell of it is, not very long after that, there was an incident, I believe, at Jackson State University where 2 black people were shot. Again, somebody check me on this because my memory's a little foggy. This is 40-plus years ago.
Yeah.
But I can't help but notice that Jackson State gets no notice, and of course Kent State gets it all.
Yeah. That reminds me, I listened to NPR a lot, especially on the weekends, and I was listening to it, I guess, last weekend, and they were talking about, and I bring it up, and now I can't remember what the person's name is, but there was like a murder investigation. They've reopened a murder investigation into the chapter president of a southern chapter of the NAACP, who was murdered like in the 40s. Even before the civil rights movement really took off, and it was the first NAACP chapter in this southern. I think it was somewhere in Kentucky, and the local police were involved. Like, the local police basically arrested, the president of this NAACP chapter and killed him and dumped him off a bridge. And the murder, his body was discovered soon after, but the murder was unsolved. And it was the NAACP closed its office, and there was no NAACP chapter in this town for like another 20 years as a result of this action. And they've just now started to look back into it and see, because it was in the 1940s, so the perpetrator of the crime is probably dead by now. Yeah. But still, just to have a sense of closure, to see, to figure out, okay, this is what happened and this is who did it. But yeah, it's amazing to think, as bad as things can sometimes be now, and as depressing as things can be when you think about racial inequality and the police brutality and all these things that still happened, that it was even worse 60, 70 years ago. It's
way worse.
Imagine, yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of shameful chapters in the history of our country.
Well, thank goodness the students of our public schools won't be learning any of those.
Not actually, Board of Education has anything to say about it.
Yeah. That actually hurts a little bit.
I know it does. It shouldn't really be a joke, because it's horrible. But like, oh, we're not going to teach them any of that stuff. Hey, where'd all the Indians go? I don't know.
Well, you got to remember that racism's done. It's over with.
That's true.
Yeah.
We do have,
why even talk about it anymore?
Look, we have an African American president. They took down that one Confederate flag, so everything's cool now.
Yeah, if you believe that one, I got this Will Swell theme park in Florida I'd like to sell you.
Actually,
it's a real Mickey Mouse operation.
Nice. I see what
in Boise, which is where I live, they took down the Mississippi flag too, just because it had a miniature.
Oh yeah, the Mississippi flag. Yeah. It's weird
which
how
no one will notice.
Speaking of Mississippi, I heard that there were some people who were complaining about the fact that the name of their university is Ole Miss. It's a racist name because that's the name that the slaves would call the plantation owner's wife, the Ole Miss.
Oh.
And so I feel like that's kind of an antiquated name.
Wow, that's a new one on me.
I mean, I should probably do some more research on that. Just something I heard, but I mean, if that's true, then they should think about maybe changing the name of their university. You know.
Well, if I know anything about women, I don't think the mistress would like to be called Old Miss. So.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Hey, I wouldn't mind.
Well, there's one person that wouldn't mind being called Ole Miss. It's interesting how so many of these, because I had never heard that either, but how many of these sort of, you know, condescending, racist expressions find their way into everyday language, and you don't even realize what it is. You know, I mean, and most of us, we don't even consciously mean it that way, but it's sort of become a part of our language. My favorite, of course, because I'm a pro wrestling fan and I like to shoehorn wrestling references into everything I do. There's, when he was wrestling for the WWF in the late 80s and early 90s, Dusty Rhodes for a short time had a manager, and his manager was a black lady, and her on-screen name was Sapphire. And I didn't know until decades later, really until just a few years ago, I'd never realized that the term sapphire was like a racist term for a black woman. So they named Dusty Rhodes' his manager, who was black, Sapphire.
I'd never heard that.
I had never, yeah.
Wasn't that from Amos and Andy?
Was it? I'm not sure.
I think
the
so.
name Ruby Begonia strike a familiar note?
If it was racist, it probably was from Amos and Andy. Or if it was from Amos and Andy, it probably was racist. I'll put it that way.
Sapphire, a racist word. Wow, I never would have thought that.
I get in that context, yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, you don't have to throw out your sapphire jewelry or anything.
Right? No, of course. It's all safely in this drawer right here.
Yeah, right.
I'm rich, secretly rich.
But in that particular context, it's and I think it's archaic. Like I don't think it's used anymore. Just like, you know, how people used to refer to older black men as uncles and that sort of thing. You don't really hear that anymore.
Right.
But in that context, that's what it means. Boy, how do we get on all these depressing subjects? Yeah, I had never heard it either. I'm not actually. I think it was. I was reading something about like racism and pro wrestling, which, as Hulk Hogan demonstrated this week, has been a problem for quite a while. And I think I read it in an article about that, like, you know, examples of racism in the history of pro wrestling, and that's one of the more subtle examples. You know, there are more obvious ones too, like giving Tony Atlas like a jungle warrior gimmick and calling him Saba Simba.
Oh,
not so much, you know. Yeah, or Kamala, probably the most racist wrestling gimmick ever. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Wayne Brady do the African chant.
I was gonna say there has been just like a nonstop barrage of depressing news lately. I mean, first Sandra Bland, and then I've actually lost track now. It's actually not coming to me. Like there's been so many.
Well, there was the shooting in Lafayette.
By a guy who had been openly misogynist for decades,
and also a known mental health risk.
Yeah, I saw something somebody posted on Facebook about it, or somebody tweeted about it, because the initial word from the police is, well, we're not sure what his motivation was for this, and someone said, okay, he's openly misogynist and racist and loves Nazis, and what could possibly have driven him to do something like this?
It's a mystery.
Yeah, it's a complete mystery.
Get Scooby-Doo.
He's one of those guys that we never saw this coming. You know, people are probably like, "Oh no, we totally saw this coming."
God, that dash cam video of Sandra Bland make you just so angry? Like, my hands were shaking. I was just so pissed off.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too is I got pulled over last weekend for having a brake light out. You know, and no trouble at all. with no trouble at all. I pulled over. I gave him my license and my registration. He went back to his car. He did whatever they do there for 15 minutes. I don't know what takes so long, but he came back up. He gave me my little repair order, said get it fixed within 30 days, and that was it. And it's the sort of thing that I just take for granted. I mean, I've been stopped by cops a bunch of times for all kinds of minor violations. We're going over the speed limit or having a brake light out or whatever, and it's never even occurred to me that my life would be in danger. Yeah. And then you look at something like that Sandra Bland dash cam, and it just is appalling.
Yeah, and
appalling, infuriating, depressing. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
And consider the fact that she probably, and she and however many thousands, millions of other black people live with that daily. I'm going to light you up? Come on!
Yeah. Yeah.
For a cigarette?
Yeah. There was an article I read where they like a legal expert went through that confrontation basically point by point and noted all of the things that officer did that he had no legal right to do, like ordering her to put the cigarette out. I mean, he can ask her to put the cigarette out, of course, but he can't order her to. She doesn't have to if she doesn't want to.
Right.
He can't just tell her to get out of the car unless he gives her a reason. I mean, there's all sorts of, and then you see how aggressive it was and how it escalated and how, traditionally, or at least ideally, a police officer should be trained in de-escalating tense situations with a civilian, and nothing that you see in that video indicates that at all. He is constantly escalating that and making things worse and worse and worse with everything he says.
And then you read the comments sections of articles that are reporting on the Sandra Bland incident, and you see these hot-headed cops come to the other officer's defense, like, oh, she was being belligerent, she just wanted to fight, blah, 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 and I just...
how much of a threat was she to him? I mean, come on. There's two things going on here that need to be brought out, and that's the fact that, number one, again, black people feel threatened, rightfully so. And number two, that it just seems to me that more and more the cops are becoming less, to serve and protect than to serve and protect us, being the cops. And I mean, there's a mindset change there that I think is fatal, and it needs to be changed back. And I don't know how we do that.
They need to stop playing soldier. That's what they need to do. They're public servants. There you go. They're not soldiers.
And the thing you need to consider is that this has probably been happening at this level for a long, long time, and it's only now that the media is kind of latching on to like, they're like, oh, people really like these stories of cops misconduct, so let's get those on the news. And
it's getting reported a lot more often too.
Exactly. So it's probably been at this level for an ungodly amount of time, and it's just like, it's frightening to think that it's only now coming out.
I know, at least in my local area, that's definitely the case. I mean, there was an incident in Martinsburg in West Virginia, which is like 10 minutes down the road from me, a couple years ago, where it was very similar to a lot of these infamous, cop on civilian incidents, where there was a man, a black man, who had some mental health problems. I think he was schizophrenic, and he was walking down the street in the city late at night, and the cops sort of pulled up on him and asked him to get up on the sidewalk or whatever, and he was not in his right mind, and he didn't comply with the officers, and eventually it was a scene where there were like 5 cops on this guy, and he died. They killed him, and it's still going through litigation. I mean, the cops themselves I think they were suspended, but I don't think any real consequences ever, they never faced any real consequences, and the family is still going through civil lawsuits trying to get some recompense for what happened, and that was one that didn't really make national headlines, and I'm sure that sort of thing happens all the time. I mean, just the thing in Baltimore, everybody got, Freddie Gray was sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back, but that sort of thing, people being maybe not killed but seriously injured as a result of being put into the back of police vans unrestrained, and the drivers giving them a rough ride on purpose, that has happened dozens of times. I mean, if you look up the Baltimore, if you look through the archives of the Baltimore Sun, there are numerous times in the last 20 years where the city has settled lawsuits with people.
Yeah, I live in Chicago, and that happened. That used to happen all the time. A tune-up.
Yeah, or a nickel ride.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, yeah, absolutely, Brett. I mean, I'm sure it's happened a lot more, in the past, and we just didn't pay attention to it. And the thing that infuriates me is not just the violence and the dereliction of duty on the part of these cops who do these things, and the institutional instinct to kind of try to cover for them instead of coming clean and trying to address the problems. It's the fact that now that everybody is paying attention to it, they're still so arrogant and entitled that they keep doing these sorts of things. If you were a cop in the United States, knowing about, Freddie Gray and all of these, over the last few years, these horrible incidents of police brutality and police murder, wouldn't you be walking the line? Wouldn't you be being extra careful? I mean, would you be getting into fights with people at traffic stops?
It's baffling.
It baffles me.
Actually, it's not baffling. The question is, what is your motivation for being a cop? Is it to be the tough guy on the block, or is it to be of service?
Yeah.
And now that's simplifying things, and I'll grant you that. But I mean, there is something of a dichotomy there, and again, whoever's vetting some of these people going on the force, the guy who shot Tamir Rice here in Cleveland, I mean, was rejected by another police force, and he was hired by Cleveland. And I'm sort of wondering, okay, who let that drop through the cracks?
That was a 12-year-old, right?
Well, yeah.
He just drove up and pop, 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 pop. I mean, Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was not on site 10 seconds, and Tamir Rice was on the ground, and because he had a toy gun that was identified as a toy gun by one of the people who was pre-vetting the situation, but that information was not passed on to the officers. So yet another drop stitch.
I don't know if we need like a national background check or something for people who apply to be police officers or what, but I mean, just the idea that you could be rejected, from one police department as being unfit for the job, and you could just go to the next town essentially, and they'll be like, "Oh, sure."
Well, I think it's a similar problem.
What standards?
Right.
I think it's a similar problem that we have with the military, that a lot of people are just they are lining up to give reach arounds to these cops because they're just like, oh, they're heroes. Because you see that a lot, and like, oh my God, my mother watches Fox News so much, where they'll defend any cop who does anything pretty much. And it's just like, come on, you have to realize that, yes, heroes and whatnot, but there's shitbags in there you have to handle, man. You can't defend all of them.
No, and in fact, if you love cops and you admire cops, you should be the first people to go after these guys.
Exactly. Like, how dare you give other cops a bad name?
Right. Yes, and if it turns out, as I think it's pretty obvious to most people, if there are systems in place that encourage police departments to protect these bad cops instead of holding them accountable, then you should be attacking that too. I mean, I got a comment last year, I think, on a video I did. I think it might have been a private message that somebody sent me through YouTube, where he said that he was a cop and he was thinking about, finding another line of work because he was one of a relative few people in his department who had a real problem with this sort of aggressive, over-the-line, brutal behavior, and he would speak up about it, and then he would immediately be sort of shushed, like shut up, like the sort of the thin blue line thing, the cone of silence, and
variations on Serpico.
Yeah,
I think this was on one of your You Had to Asks.
Yes, now that I think about it,
I remember that. Yeah.
And it breaks your heart to hear that, and to know that there are probably, he can't, this guy is not the only good cop in the country. There are thousands and thousands of people just like him who are probably dismayed at what is going on and are just as embarrassed and angry about it as the rest of us, but are are sort of pressured to keep quiet, you know. And you hear stories also about how, you know, police commanders are constantly pushing the officers on the street to meet quotas, even though legally they're not allowed to have quotas. They have these sort of informal quotas. You know, I want you to write this many tickets, stop this many people, you file this much paperwork, just to prove that they're doing their jobs. And, you know, it just it exacerbates an already awful situation when you're pushing cops to say, go out there, stop people, you know. Like there was an episode of This American Life I listened to a little while ago where they told the story of a guy who had been arrested dozens of times for loitering, and he was supposedly loitering outside of a store that he worked at.
I saw that.
Yeah, and they arrested him and took him in for loitering like dozens of times. And every time they took this guy in, they got to file a report and saying, "See, here's something I did today." And they were just sort of abusing this guy as an easy mark because they figured, well, he doesn't have any money, he's not going to raise a stink about it. So even though they knew that what they were doing was wrong, they continually harassed this guy and arrested this guy just so they could bump their numbers up so it would look good in their statistics. It's, you know,
shameful.
Yeah.
Just pisses you off. Pisses me off, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually read
the kind of pressure that the cops are currently under is going to make it harder to get good cops. Never mind the fact that, you know, how well are they being paid? You know, it's the standard's just getting set higher and higher and higher, and meeting that standard is just going to become that much tougher.
Well, you know, you mentioned a minute ago about, you know, or do you want to? What is your motivation for becoming a cop? And
exactly.
is it something other than being a public servant? And part of it, and this is clearly not the only problem, because there's lots of stuff going on. There's, you know, institutional pressure on cops. There's racism. There's all kinds of stuff that is making these things happen, or, you know, encouraging these things to happen. But, you know, I think part of it is also like our culture is just so cynical now. We're so suspicious of the very notion of someone going into public service just for the sake of it, because they want to help people, because they want to do good. I mean, even for professions that have traditionally been thought of as sort of, you know, pure benevolent professions, like being a doctor, you always hear about being a doctor discussed purely in economic terms, and it's never like, well, why doesn't anybody want to be a doctor because they want to help people anymore? Doesn't anybody want to be a cop because they want to help people, because they want to look after their neighborhood? I mean, is that so foreign of an idea now?
Well, you made the point in your Superman video, you know, when Chris Reeve delivered that line straight up. You know, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. And you're right, he said it absolutely straight. And the natural reaction in this day and age is, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding. No, he wasn't kidding. One of the things I kind of pride myself in the fact is I was in field service for 30 years. And I love the idea of helping people and solving problems. And it sharpened what I was about, and it helped those guys out, and I made a living at it. It was great.
Yeah, it's depressing to think that sort of attitude has gone so far by the wayside. You know.
I kind of have a problem with that idea, though. Go ahead.
My understanding of the millennials is that there's a lot of service-oriented, you know, really interested in that sort of thing. And you know what? I'm 42, so I'm clearly not in that group. But
I'm 65, almost 65, so neither am I.
Well, I mean, I'm a millennial technically.
The millennials are always getting a lot of stick for a lot of things, but unfairly, I think. But I think that's one of the real bright spots, is that there is this sort of sense of service with them. I wish they'd vote more.
Yeah.
But
well, me too.
The service thing they seem to be down with, which is brilliant. So.
Yeah, actually, I have the most recent episode of Five Stupid Things was about the Greatest Generation, and then the next one coming up this week is going to be about baby boomers, and then the one after that is about millennials. And I'll go ahead and just spoil it. I'm easier on the millennials than I'm on the baby boomers.
Yeah, thanks,
Maybe
Steve.
maybe it's just me being self-serving.
Oh,
You're hitting our group, huh?
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, the baby boomer. I'll tell you this: the baby boomer video came out so mean that I give like a disclaimer for it in the front. It's the first 5 Stupid Things video where I've ever, before the video actually starts, I say, please don't take offense if you're a baby boomer. I say some mean things about baby boomers, and I don't mean to indict you as an individual. You might be like a great person. I'll
tell you what, Steve, anybody who had to grow up in the 60s, where you had Nam, you had, you know, the advent of LSD and the sexual revolution, you had
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's throw in a combination of Lyndon Baines Johnson at his worst and Richard Nixon at his best and his worst. And then you add to that the space race, the constant banging heads between us and the Russians, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs. Everyone forgets the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah.
I mean, the 60s was stuffed. And actually, it was stuffed in the American sense and it was stuffed in the British sense.
Nice. Nice. I always say whenever people ask that really annoying question of, what time period would you live in if you couldn't live in this time period that you're currently in, I always say the 60s, but it's only for the space program. If I could somehow ignore all the other stuff and just focus on the space program. But yeah,
I mean, a wild time.
Yeah. Yeah, this was just last week or earlier this week, I guess, was the anniversary of Apollo 11. Mm-hmm. It always sneaks up on me. I never realize it until that day, and I see people posting about it on social media, and I'm like, oh, holy shit! It's July 20th. It's the anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing.
It's the
I was 10 years old when that happened.
Of the Mariner 4 flyby. It went by Mars the same day as New Horizons did its Pluto flyby, July 14th, 65.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the first first images taken from a spacecraft of another planet. It navigated by the stars. It's a pretty cool little mission.
Yeah, I know a little bit about the Mariner mission. I didn't realize that it was the same day as the New Horizons flyby. That is awesome.
Pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, that's really cool. It's, I mean, those I would really love for there to be a more robust manned space program, and I mean, NASA is very, very gingerly taking steps in that direction again. Not fast enough to suit me, because
I'm looking forward to the Mars mission. That's
I would love to see them do what Neil deGrasse Tyson has wanted them to do forever, and that is double the budget instead of 0.5%. How about 1%? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, do we really need to spend bazillion on defense?
I did my most recent Breakfast Club video was about people who think that the Pluto flyby was faked, and
Those exist too now.
Yeah, Pluto hoaxers. They pick any cool thing, and you'll find some dipshit conspiracy theorist on the internet who will find a way to shit all over it.
Why do people seem to believe that we can't do anything cool?
I know.
Well, it seems like it's the same people that think that the aliens built the pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the aliens built the pyramids, but we can't, launch an unmanned spacecraft.
Exactly.
Beyond Earth orbit.
Because people are so stupid, we can't put rocks on top of each other.
As it comes to spacecraft, anybody here remember the Vikings?
Yes.
The two Viking spacecraft that landed on Mars. I mean, that was 1960s and very early 70s technology, and those things were spectacular.
Yeah.
What was the one that landed on Venus? Or was that a Russian probe?
It was Russian.
Russians seem to do well with Venus for some odd reason.
We went one way.
I mean, it lasted 10 minutes and then it died.
It was
raining sulfuric acid and all that.
Slightly hostile environment.
Why did it last that long?
It looked like my idea of hell, if I believed in it.
Pretty cool. Oh, yeah.
Just everything's on fire and...
I don't know. My
Fortunately,
version
there's
of
no
Hell wanted a lot
oxygen
more
there, so-
Fox commentators.
Well, maybe we could send some of them to Venus. Maybe we could, like NASA
Can we
could.
send Donald Trump to Venus,
Oh,
please?
Donald Trump. Oh my God.
That would be very nice.
I need him for my entertainment, please.
Yeah, I know.
I can do
I
a
I
job
love
on
Jon
transportation.
Stewart's
Thank you.
all of Jon Stewart's comments about how fun it is to watch him running for president.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun in a sense, but it's also just incredibly dismaying. It's like this guy he's actually running for president of the United States.
Yeah.
And how? How? He's not a politician. He has no political experience. I mean, I feel like even Ronald Reagan, even though he was an actor, how much political experience did he have before he was president?
Well,
Oh,
he
yeah.
had 2 terms as governor.
He was a
What
governor,
about
yeah.
H. Ross Perot? How much experience did he have? And yet, I mean, the one thing he got right was the great sucking sound that was going to happen when NAFTA got passed.
Yeah.
And
If
the
Ross
thing is-
actually did pretty good for a third-party candidate. If he
Yeah,
hadn't been
he
so
did.
clearly
Right.
in pain, he might have
You know
done.
what? I think
Didn't he get
Reagan.
something like 19% of the vote?
Yeah,
Mhm.
the first time. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
Reagan
not
is
first
the
time,
greatest
second
actor
time was a shit show, but
in history because he pretended to be the president for 8 years.
You know,
Great actor. What a great performance.
He was a great actor.
I think the existence of people like Trump is why the millennials don't vote. They're like, really?
Yeah.
Choices?
Well,
But ironically, the existence of people like Trump are also the reason why millennials absolutely have to vote.
Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
vote.
well, yeah. I mean, I've been voting since 21, and when we got the vote, of course, it's moved down since then. And the thing that's, I mean, it's like the GOP we keep asking, well, can it get any crazier? And we keep getting a yes answer, and it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
I mean, I'm only 35, but I can trace the I guess the decline of the sanity of the mainstream Republican Party very clearly, because I remember being in middle school and seeing like one of those little paperback books that you would find at a truck stop about, you know, how Bill Clinton was, you know, a drug trafficker and a murderer and like all these conspiracy theories about Bill Clinton. And it was just a little, you know, newsprint paperback pamphlet that you would find at a truck stop somewhere. And now the same sorts of people who would have written that pamphlet are the ones that are running for Congress and hosting television shows. And like they're driving a huge portion of the party. And it's clear as day. If you remember, these were 20, 30 years ago, they were running, you know, newsletters off in their basement, and now they're on television. And
they're
American
mainstream.
dream.
Yeah.
I feel like the one presidential candidate who isn't either a loudmouth idiot or a little bit radical is Hillary Clinton. She's the one. I mean, I love Bernie Sanders, but come on, like his I agree with everything he does, but his ideas are a little radical for America. I don't think America's ready for him yet. Hillary Clinton is the one presentable candidate, and
Well,
at least Republicans used to have presentable candidates, even if we didn't agree with them.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah. But
Watching all the presidential races, I think there needs to be a serious blowback against the idea of, well, that's just your opinion. No, you're just wrong. You're wrong. That's what's it.
Yeah.
There's that marvelous quote from Daniel Patrick Moynihan: "You're allowed your own opinions, but you're not allowed your own facts."
Oh.
Yeah.
And that's a classic as far as I'm concerned.
We
And I
are
just-
we are way too tolerant of people who say demonstrably false things, especially when those people are our elected representatives of government.
Well, that's a comment I made on one of those videos. You know, number one, get the money out. Number two, get some outfit like PolitiFact to be fact-checking this stuff and getting it into the public media. And, you know, the thing that's bothersome to me is the fact that we had PolitiFact as a regular thing, like at least a couple of times a week in the PD, you know, the Plain Dealer, which is our local paper. And it has been gone, and boy, we need it back. In fact, I'm liable to write the PD and say, hey, get it back. Come on.
Yeah. It's it's a great resource. And you know, the thing about people like Trump and a lot of Republican candidates, a lot of the sort of far right Republican candidates that show strongly in the primaries and then always kind of die off, and then someone like Romney will get the nomination. But the thing that people like Trump succeed at doing is they sell fantasies to people. Trump responds to the Iran nuclear deal by basically just throwing that whole thing in the garbage can and saying, I'll tell you what I would have done. I would have gone over there and I would have flipped his desk over and pissed in his face and I would have said, this is how it's going to be. Like, no, dude. You might think that you're a big man and you could just walk into another country and force them to give you your own way, but that's just not the way it works.
Yeah, it's funny how he wouldn't go to Nam.
Yeah.
And then you got him talking about building this huge Game of Thrones style wall on the border of Mexico.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
People like Trump don't look at it the other way around. They're like, I would walk into his room and do this, but it's like, what if someone did that to you? You'd be like, get the fuck out of my office.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what to do in my office.
This guy's a bossy asshole. Let me give him whatever he wants.
Exactly. It's like
you press that button on your phone and say, security.
Exactly.
There's an asshole in my office.
He reminds me of one of the unhinged Roman emperors. Can you imagine this dude? He's like, one of the 5 worst Roman emperors, just a total shitbird.
Like a Nero.
Yeah, he's just kicking the top off of every anthill he can find.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really.
On Friday, I shot a 5 Super Things video about him. It won't go up until next month because I shoot so far ahead. But I don't know. Hopefully, maybe by that time he'll have dropped out. Probably not. But I had to do a little research on him to write the video, and most of it was stuff that I already knew, but I was just sort of being reminded of. And it really is amazing that a guy like Donald Trump could be such an asshole so publicly for so long and still be treated, however temporarily, as a serious candidate for president. I mean, I think we all sort of know that eventually he's going to drop out. He's not really going to be the nominee, but the fact that he's getting so much attention and taking up so much of the oxygen at this point, after being such a bastard, is amazing.
I hate to, sort of throw out what may be a cliche, but I think it still holds up. You got sizzle and you got steak, and the problem is we're getting a whole bunch of sizzle at this point, and I mean, where's the steak? Where's the substance? And that's what we need, and it's what we're not getting.
Well, maybe part of the problem with that is we've allowed the presidential primary season to spread so far into the year. I mean, the election, the first primary election isn't until next year, guys, and there's already like 15 Republicans that have announced their candidacy. So we have, and they're going to start having debates, and they're going to start running commercials, and this is all. I mean, the elections aren't until 2016. We're just over halfway through 2015. We've got 6 months of this stuff before anybody even casts a single vote.
Yeah, and I can remember when the primary season started in in February or March of the election year.
Yeah, I mean, why do you need this much time? Our attention.
This well. 6 weeks and then shut the fuck up. Done.
Yeah.
Exactly.
More time than that.
They need to drill.
You'll understand where the negative ads start turning into Triple H style promos.
Oh God. You mean they last 20 minutes and you want to turn off the TV?
Well,
yeah, perhaps.
I mean, that's the next step too. Political infomercials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did everyone think about because I didn't know how to feel when Donald Trump gave out Lindsey Graham's personal cell phone number, over
completely
TV.
Irresponsible.
Because, here's how I thought of it. I thought of it as Graham saying, "You're stupid," and Trump saying, "No, you're stupid." No, well, I'm gonna give your phone number. You're gonna stop being mean to me. Boo boo.
Exactly.
It's just like kids on the fucking playground.
Yeah.
It did at least answer one question for me, which was, what will it take to get me to sympathize with Lindsey Graham? Now I know. Donald Trump.
You could say Donald Trump's acting like an adult.
Yeah. I mean, our attention span for everything else has shrunk but for the political elections, it's like it has swelled to ridiculous proportions. Like what? 6 weeks, 6 weeks before the election, not 6 months. That 6 months before the primary, for Christ's sake, it's insane.
Towards 6 years at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is an endless. Isn't it the congressmen? I mean, they can't even do their job. They're fundraising all the time. 2 years. Yeah. I mean, the elections started before you've even finished the last one almost now.
Yeah.
Well, the act of running itself is a promotion for like how much they're going to be paid for keynote speaking and such.
Yeah.
We've been talking about Hillary since the last election, so it's almost like the cycle's becoming continuous instead of, start the election cycle, stop it, start it, stop it. It's just forever now.
Yeah, it's endless and utterly fucking annoying.
I hope people get sick of it soon. That'd be wonderful.
Well,
I wouldn't hold my breath.
I was just gonna say I hope so, but I wouldn't hold my breath either.
The whole thing is just a big pissing contest, and they all like to piss. So
yeah,
and they're full of it too.
Part of it is their fault, and I mean by they, I mean both the political organizations and the media that covers it and puts it on TV, and part of it is our fault that we pay so much attention to it. But yeah, I would expect that we would fix that probably around the same time as we embrace serious gun control. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. I think there are too many people who think everything is just fine the way it is. Yeah.
Well, you've got to get people who are willing to pay attention to serious news and are more interested in, Scott Pelley and, whoever else than they are in Jerry Springer and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen because it's harder to get serious about something than it is to just be superficial and what the hell.
Yeah, and not just the Jerry Springers of the world, but the 24-hour news networks too, because they encourage this superficial view of the news. I mean, in one sense, you can say, well, it's better because now if something happens, you learn about it right away.
Yeah,
but on the other hand, yeah, go ahead.
It's not just superficial, it's obsessive. I mean, look at what CNN did, like with MH570, and with some of these other stupid things going on that it's news. We're gonna lean on this and we're gonna jump on it and we're gonna be absolutely crazy about it until we've worn it out.
That's the problem with modern day news, is that instead of wanting to be a public service to the people to tell them what's going on, it's all a race to make headlines first. And I mean, I studied journalism for a year and a half, and all I hear about is headlines. If it bleeds, it leads. And nowadays, people, whenever
and the important headlines, the stuff that sells papers.
yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's what sells papers. It's not what informs people. It's what sells papers.
Yeah.
And I think I heard an article this week about before the news for news stations, whether the BBC or the American news stations, used to be something that they did as a service to the people. But now people are looking at it as this section of our business needs to make money. So now the news has to make money rather than the news being a service.
It's network all over again.
Yeah. And the news divisions back, and look, I mean, journalism has always had a sensationalist quality to it. There have always been people who were more interested in selling papers than in reporting accurate news. But yeah, what Matthew just said is something I've said recently too, is that the news division of at least of a major media corporation, like a TV network, like CBS News, that used to be something that was assumed wouldn't really make all that much money. It was just something that the network did as a public service and to justify the government giving it a broadcast license. So you wouldn't just be using your license to use the airwaves to make profit for yourself and your private company or your shareholders or whatever. You would be performing a public service, and the news was part of that public service. But then a few decades ago, that changed around to, well, we're going to move the news more into the entertainment division, and we'll still report the news, and we'll still tell you what's going on, but we're going to try to make some money off of this because we're tired of losing money on the news. And that whole idea of the news being a public service, being a responsibility that the TV networks owed to the people in exchange for having the right to broadcast on the airwaves, just vanished.
You remember that speech that Will McAvoy made? I think it was the 3rd episode of the Newsroom, when he said, "I'm going to work for the other guys now," and he spelled a lot of this out in that about 5-minute speech that he gave.
Yeah, nobody seems to want to wait for the facts anymore, though. You know, that's my biggest problem with journalism, is that no one. It is literally all about fast, get it in now, and when you do that, you don't realize that you're missing stuff. You're confusing people. You're giving false impressions. When you do that, you need to wait for the facts to come in, and no one wants to do that anymore. And that's why I hate journalism.
That was the whole Gabby Giffords thing when NPR miscalled her death.
Or the Boston Marathon bombing, where they were on the ground for like 6 hours before they had any information. Just,
we're here.
Or on 9/11, when people, when they said, didn't they report that a plane had flown into the Sears Tower or something like that? Or no. They reported that the Building 7 had fallen down like 7 hours before it did.
Yeah.
Like that.
Which conspiracy theorists latch on.
Yeah, and that's another thing about the way we report news now, where there's so much pressure to go on the air as soon as possible and report anything you know or even anything you've heard. And I guess they figure it's okay as long as they add a disclaimer where they say, "Now these are just rumors. This is unconfirmed," and then they go ahead and say it. But yeah, there are all these conspiracy theorists for whatever reason, because it's. I mean, I know why, because it serves whatever their pet narrative is, but they somehow consider like those first news reports as the most reliable, when it's exactly the opposite. And you know, you read reports of like, well, you know, the first reports out of the Sandy Hook shooting said this, and this, but then the next day they changed their story to this, and this. Well, yeah, they changed their story because they figured out what the fuck was going on. And that second report is the more reliable, more accurate report. But okay, go ahead. Pretend that the first one, where nobody knew what the hell was happening, that's the more reliable one. And you know, the one that after everybody huddled up in the middle and said, okay, what happened? That disregard that. That's not important. Yeah.
Another thing is, I feel like a lot of cable news companies, they don't seem interested in conveying the message when something terrible happens. Hey guys, let's all remain calm. They seem to just want to do the exact opposite and say, "Holy shit! Look at this thing! Like they explode like Lewis Black on stage, and it's like, "Oh my god!"
Are you panicking yet? Why the fuck not?
Yeah. They're flying planes into buildings.
Riot.
I mean, I can understand. I remember 9/11 very clearly. I understand why we were all freaked out. I was freaked out a little bit at the time too. But I mean, yeah, our leaders and our media didn't exactly help. They weren't exactly like, okay, let's just take a minute, let's just relax, let's think about what we know, and there's no need to panic. There really wasn't a lot of that.
Relax, just read My Pet Goat.
Yeah, well, yeah. Apparently, the president was pretty relaxed about the whole thing, but.
Well, I literally just rewatched Fahrenheit 9/11 again, and seeing him sitting there like a lump on a bump on a log.
Yeah.
Picking up the book after being told the second building had been hit, and you're sort of going, George, it's time to do something.
Should you maybe, I don't know, do something? I really want to see how the story turns out. Yeah, I want to find out what happens to this goat. I never read this one before. It's not going to be sad like at the end of the Given Tree, is it?
Yeah, I mean, that movie infuriated me, and the hell of it is I made it a double feature, and the second feature was And the Band Played On.
Oh, God, you really have a... you really were in a self-loathing mood, weren't you?
Well...
That's a depressing movie, too.
And then, of course, to finish it all off, I ended up writing a blog entry saying, okay, what do, these two things have something in common. Republican presidents.
Yeah. Republican presidents responding poorly to crises.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. And if you guys don't know what And the Band Played On is, it was a book, too, wasn't it?
It was, by Randy Schultz.
Yeah, and it's about the the early years of the AIDS crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually listened to the audio version of it, which it was a much edited audio version because the book runs like 600 plus pages.
Yeah.
But just to listen to it, you want to scream at these people. You know, you're supposed to serve all of us. Damn it!
Yeah.
You know? And not just the guys who are making the money, and not just the guys who are waving the influence under your nose.
Yeah.
Not just the
You
white
seem to be
people.
really good at making things that are not crises into crises.
Yeah, isn't that
really
interesting?
good at ignoring the crises that are crises?
Right. Let's not worry about this real thing. But I don't know, guys. But there has to be something to this Benghazi thing, right?
Or just look at ISIS. I mean, there are people trying to convince us that ISIS has anywhere near the manpower to actually pose a threat to our Constitution or to our freedom. No, they don't.
Yeah.
Or look at this.
I mean, they're scary. They're dangerous.
She's buying lobster.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is. I mean, yeah, it is. It's nice that like all the hysterical ISIS people. It's nice that they're so concerned and so empathetic for the victims of ISIS in the Arab world, because that's the only place that ISIS is actually threatening people. And
it's the only place that there are victims.
Yeah, and if I thought that they were really concerned about those people, I would applaud them for their sympathy and their empathy and their desire to help people in other countries. But I really don't think they actually give a shit. I think they think ISIS is a useful boogeyman to scare people here into voting for them or giving them their way.
I think they just want to turn their houses into forts and play soldier in case ISIS just like marches in with their like 35,000 soldiers somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know what they think is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know either. I always think, if you want to know what it feels like to really be threatened by ISIS, then you should travel to the part of the world where ISIS is. And then you compare how you feel then to how you feel now when you think you're very threatened by ISIS. I get the feeling there will be a very noticeable difference. I mean, all these people who piss and moan about, Sharia law, and they have no problem whatsoever with the repeated attempts to impose Christian fundamentalist values on people through the law. That's totally okay. That's what the founding fathers wanted, apparently. But
they also fail to see how much Mosaic law and Sharia law have in common, and it's an awful lot.
Yeah. So
it's based on the other. So. Yeah.
So the imaginary threat of Sharia law in the United States, we should all be worried about that. That's a threat to our freedom.
Oh, definitely.
But
and it's all the same people. They say one thing out one side of their mouth, and out the other comes the other. It's the lack of self-awareness there is
baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's I guess because it's been a shitty news week. It's been a very depressing hangout. not your guys'.
Before we close it up, may I just insert a little bit of a positive thing? Have you seen the feedback, the kickback from the ABC News thing? What would you do with the atheist in the restaurant?
Yes, I have.
That's what Jack
I mean, there's like 4,000 comments on that, and most of them are just going, ABC and John Quinones up your face, just bang.
What is this? I'm not aware of this one.
Oh, so what the deal was? They have. Are you familiar with the format of the show? Basically, they stage a moral dilemma. Well, not really a dilemma, but a moral issue, right? It's all staged, and then they see how people that don't know about it respond to it. So what they have on this particular one is they have a family that it's in a restaurant, right? And so this family, they all hold hands and they're starting to pray over their lunch or something. And so then they have this woman who's playing an atheist kind of get all up in their shit about praying. And
which happens all the time.
Who the fuck does this?
Yeah.
I mean, I see that kind of thing all the time.
That's the only reason I go to restaurants is to break up praying families.
Oh yeah. If I don't get to hassle some religious people in a restaurant, I feel like I've wasted my time.
Jacqueline Glenn had a video, blog or whatever on this recently, and it's pretty funny. I mean, just the whole the reverse of this, which happens all the time. You know, where the fuck was that on this show? But
it is nice though that the response to it has been nice because it shows that most atheists totally reject that kind of behavior. Most atheists would be mortified for people to think that they would invade someone else's meal and give them a hard time about praying if they're just keeping to themselves, even if they are in a restaurant. Like it's none of my business. Do whatever you want. If you're not bothering me, I won't bother you. It's nice that to see that kind of a response from people saying, whoa, we think that's bullshit too. We would never behave that way, and then to see those people sort of serving as a model for other atheists, because there is I think small but vocal minority of mostly internet atheists who would say, yeah, I would do the same thing. Fuck people praying in public. We can't give them any, the religion is ruined in this country, and I don't think they represent the large majority of people who identify as atheists. I think most of us would never behave that way and would never want to behave that way.
Oh, of course not.
So it's nice to see that side of it, because I sometimes worry that the public face of atheism is not the best face that we could be putting forward, and that people, as happens with a lot of other groups, people judge atheists as a whole by their most belligerent and obnoxious members. And it's nice to see, in the response to that "What Would You Do" segment, so many of the other atheists, which I think represent the greater number, coming forward and saying, no, we're not like that. We would never do that.
Well, here's the thing too. Who's going door to door spreading the good news of good old Jeebus, and who's spreading going door to door with spreading the good news of rationalism?
Right. Yeah, I know. Richard Dawkins was knocking on my door the other day, handing out paperback copies of The God Delusion.
I actually wouldn't mind that though.
Have you considered forsaking Jesus? Way ahead of you, Richard. I'm already there, man.
I have that book, by the way. Great book.
Yeah, I have it on my Kindle.
I'd be like, Richard, would you like some mac and cheese?
I'd give him
How about some spaghetti?
That'd be delightful.
I would love to share
I'm waiting
some
on
pasta.
breakfast, so I'm going to have to beg off, guys. Thank you a lot, Steve, as always.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to wrap this up anyway. We're over an hour. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you guys for joining me here in the room. My patrons, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support, and thank you for it. You make what I do possible and so much better. So thank you guys for joining me, and thank you all for watching. We'll do this again next month.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye, everybody.